contemplation was after my alarm died on Friday and my computer went blank on Saturday. I had time to do some contemplation, and I drew this verse up. So for those of you, Chester, you always keep track of these things. This is 1 Kings 19, 11 through 14. He said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then there came a voice to him that said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He answered, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it away." And I was kind of kidding about all the chaos technologically that's occurred in my life here recently, but I'm thinking that and looking at the media, looking at our world every day. You know, if I open up Fox or Microsoft News or anything else and see one more headline about people killing one another, I feel like I'm going to throw up. It's just every day. And this is diet our country's being fed day after day after day. So there are times when we need to just withdraw and wait for that. I would suggest you wait for that sheer silence. Don't pay attention to the wind and the earthquake and the fire, but go and look for that sheer silence and find God in there. So the verse...
I was going to say, Mike, I was going to bring it up in one of the later questions you published, but you also hear an awful lot in the news today about mindfulness. If you want to do that in business, that you get out of, when you get out of bed, you take those few moments of quiet time. Sometimes it's Christian based, sometimes it's not. It's more of a internal Eastern religion type base, but they want you to calm down, contemplate, look at your own thoughts, think of nature. So you're hearing a lot in the world today about mindfulness and meditation and yoga, all those stress-reducing things.
Well,
that's big news too.
In seminary, we call that intentionality. And I find it hard. I went out for lunch 3 days ago and talked to this African-American woman, and she was kind of had the same thoughts on this as I did, that she says we're never going to move beyond this until we really grasp love. And how many headlines say a black man with black capitalized killed by a white man? It really is depressing me, frankly, that the media seems committed to every day bringing up racial strife. And so in this context, as Christians, we profess something different. So my first contemplation question is, where do you guys go to meet God? How do you get a break from this onslaught of negativity in social media and the news?
A little bit. One of the things we talked about last week was the forest and nature. I mean, for me, it's kind of that. It's kind of almost one of the only times you're ever where something's not going on. So I would say for me, especially as I've gotten older, appreciating what is there and God's beauty in nature.
Yeah.
I try to read the Bible every day. there's a Bible app, and I'm doing through the whole Bible plan right now. But also I walk my dogs and listen to sermons. So that's a good way to just put some positivity in my head other than media.
Excellent.
Almost same for me. When my first answer was when I'm walking the dogs, a lot of times Elizabeth and I'll do it together, but if I'm by myself and walking the dogs, I am listening to something positive and good, and it is very peaceful. And it's okay not to stop in front of every 4,000 and have to have a conversation. You just gotta.
Is that why everybody in Wildwood thinks you're a snob? Or?
Well, sometimes I'll do conference, I'll be on the phone anyway, but yeah.
Is that why you're always doing it?
Unlike Gray, who quiet walks with the dogs are zooming in on this session.
Yeah.
Bobby the dog going around Chastain with every dump truck rolling down the road. Yeah, sorry about that sun coming in.
Yeah, I generally, after I've showered or whatever, before I turn on the TV to see all the news, I'll sit at the corner of the couch, use the upper room devotional, which you can pick up just outside there. I use that and then kind of reading a portion of the Bible every day in some kind of order, some book. But that's kind of my quiet time is more around the upper room.
And so how do you go through the Bible in an orderly fashion?
Well, I've done it a couple of times. I read the Bible in a year, about 3 chapters a day. So, when I just kind of pick a book or a series of books in rotation. Like right now, maybe it's the epistles, and I'll start and read from like one headline to the next headline where there's a natural break. I'll read that during the day.
The plan I'm doing, it's called The Lookout. Neil Creech told me about it, but it's a little bit from, I think it's broken down. The Gospel is one section, the rest of the New Testament is another section, and there's an Old Testament section, and then it's the Psalms, Proverbs, and Song of Solomon is another section.
Yeah, that's what Bowie uses: Old Testament, the Psalter,
that's right.
The Gospels, and the rest of the New Testament. So you get a sampling, and we've done this before in this group.
Well, the church liturgical calendar does that too. They have every day when there's a Old Testament, New Testament, the Gospel, and the Psalms and Proverbs. Is that the liturgical calendar? On that 3-year cycle.
Yeah, that's correct. And, when I first started 2 years ago, as you guys remember, we were breaking and having an offering from each of those 4 sections to give you kind of a broad overview to contemplate. But it goes back to having some respite from the chaos of the world. And I'm thinking, if this, I look at how the news impacts me, and I'm thinking, what if I multiply this throughout our country and throughout the world?
Mike, is it chaos and is it media? I mean, to me, what I hear is an alcoholic blaming the beer.
Well, that's why I wean myself off.
Seriously, is what I'm hearing here is.
Good analogy.
Dan's laying down the wood.
Right out there.
He likes to go after the teacher, just get it out.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I look at, you can name anyone. You can name my 15-year-old daughter. She knows nothing about what's going on in Cuba. She knows nothing about what murder or what the media is focused on. But I assure you, she is busy, she is chaotic, and she is attached to this. And she turns on the television. It's not the news, but she turns on some god-awful program that's about crime and rape or Bachelor or something is feeding her brain and taking her attention, robbing her of that silent contemplation.
You don't like The Bachelor? He likes The Bachelor.
They turned him down. He applied.
That's painful. I'm still not ready to talk about it. But I mean,
Unfortunately, I think part of it is also, you hear the line, love your neighbors, you love yourself, and we kind of kid that's not setting a very high standard.
right, but
A lot of people don't like themselves, they can't get in their own mind, or play by themselves, but they don't like what they hear.
take that up, right? But take that up a level. I mean, what as I say, alcoholic blaming the beer. This is, we have access to any and everything we want in this device.
Right. That's one thing that's funny when people get in arguments. Right here, why argue? Just Google it, and you'll get some answer.
That doesn't resolve anything because you're enjoying the argument.
It's not with you.
You're gonna find no. But I meant but what I'm getting at is we can come up with any excuse not to contemplate. We can come up with any excuse and blame that not to take that personal private time. And we live in a society that if you like soccer, not only can you watch soccer 24 hours here in the United States, you can go to the Asian League, you can go to the Latin League, you can figure out who the coach is, you can figure out who in the off season, you can start following the players you want on Twitter and figure out what club they're at. I mean, you can absorb yourself and preoccupy yourself and things that you can't even imagine 10 years ago.
Well,
Let alone
that was
decades.
Pascal observed that
Did he?
and said, most men fear being alone with their thoughts more than anything else. Why is that? What do you do when you don't have something being thrown at you?
We need to have Gary England come and speak to us, right? When he gets back from that.
Yes.
We do.
The dude told me that he took a day off because he had hiked 52 miles in 2 days. So I'm going,
Wow.
I want to go take a nap.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so tired.
Only 2 pairs of shoes, too.
Yeah.
You think about like the mileage, you might think about 3 or 4 pairs of shoes.
I have a 23-year-old nephew he just reached the Virginia border. He's been doing that. He's going to come home for college soon. But my sister told me he's lost 55 pounds.
Yeah.
Really?
55.
Yeah. I mean, he's not really overweight, but he was not in the best shape in the world. He's just not a really athletic college kid, but he's lost 55 pounds.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, I guess it's been 2 months or something like that. But it has been really hard for him. I'm sure it's hard for anyone.
It's a lot less weight to carry.
Yeah, that's right.
He lost the pack. Lost the whole pack.
He got rid of 20 pounds out of his pack within the first week. He just realized
Don't need it.
Yeah,
I haven't hiked it. They said there's all kinds of stuff along the Fletcher Trail that people abandon.
yeah.
So what do you do when you can't find your contemplated place? So you can have those. I mean, you can have your spots you go to, but you're stuck in traffic or having to go through customs twice in 24 hours in the hot and heat and humidity. I mean, what do you do then?
Yell at the driver next to you.
I can't.
Road rage. Take a golf club to the car nearest.
I mean, think about it. I mean, basically, even if you have your, a place or something, an opportunity where you're like, this is nice, it's quiet, it's peaceful, this is a good spot. I mean, really map it out over a week. How much time on average do you spend in that spot? My bet is probably very, very tiny, hardly even measurable. So you've got then the rest of your life where you've got your chaos or media or whatever is, driving you nuts. Isn't that really what you've got to create? I mean, I can go, take a vacation for a week and go to the beach and sit on the beach and think this is wonderful, but that's 1 week out of 52.
Right. So how do you structure that? I mean, you guys
You do it the way Seinfeld's father did. He yells "Serenity now."
Insanity later.
That's right.
Well, isn't it about forming habit?
Especially on farms,
Is one
we're
way.
raised with the motto of idle hands in the devil's workshop. If you wouldn't let me apply, because if you applied in thinking, it usually was something bad that would enter your mind. So they want to keep their mind busy to keep away from some of those satanic thoughts.
How does that contrast with what Mike said about Pascal, that we fear our time by ourselves, if I'm paraphrasing you correctly? We fear what we're going to do with our own time, that we choose to be idle. I mean, to me it seems in contrast. Am I the only one that thinks that?
Say it again. 'Cause I'm not-
Well, idle hands is what? Say it again, Christopher.
Idle hands
Some
in the
people
devil's
raise
workshop.
the
Okay.
idle hands in the devil's workshop.
Okay, so in the same
The
light,
expression is idle minds.
idle minds is the devil's workshop, and then Pascal says we fear. You can paraphrase it, or
Well, we fear time by ourselves.
and then we're talking about contemplation,
Which is what you do when you're by yourself.
which is
But
What's your
one's direct, well, you can direct that though, right? Like if you sit down and you're directing yourself, like I'm gonna contemplate whatever. It's kind of like you're making a decision. Should you direct your thoughts or just let your thoughts run wild? And I think those are two different things.
Well, Tommy Newberry got us, I was in his workshop 2005 to 2007, and he suggested intentional downtime. And what I did was I go up to the Silver Comet, and it was like prayer. I would meditate and try to empty my mind and just walk. Have nothing, purposely try to have nothing on my mind. And it was wonderful. It was rejuvenative. And I found myself coming up with insights because I wasn't distracted. So what do you think about obstacles? I mean, kind of
Well, my
observed that
question
it
would
was
be, what do you think about when you think about nothing?
yeah.
you can do that.
Yeah,
It's a luxury because you don't, we've all got stuff, this cacophony of noise going on in our lives. So how do you free yourself from that? Because I think it is a luxury. It takes a lot of willpower to do nothing. You have to say to yourself, for these 2 hours, I don't have an agenda.
I don't do nothing, but I like yard work and I mow my grass. I mow my grass a lot. And that's when I go out and I use that time to think.
You
And
know, some extra time.
not fields. I don't live in fields.
He was going to get a mule, but if you could,
Yeah, I got a better deal.
But that
Let's
time
work with this.
where you're accomplishing a task, like it's a start and a finish, and you just have time to think, and nobody's bothering you. I put my headphones or my earphones in, and I just go, and that's kind of how I break away, is being out in the yard.
I think you can block out chaos. I was thinking my oldest son once referred to me as Mr. Magoo. That's a cartoon character from the East Coast. You know, he just walks through life and everything's around him. He said, "That's Dad." He said he just, walks aimlessly through life enjoying it.
Never should have told that anecdote.
Well, it's a safe space. Well, when I put my sun hat on, I look like him. But I was at the farm a while back, and I'm on my ATV, and it's a little noisy. But I'm out there, and I'm looking at the trees, and I'm thinking. I am really into my farm and the trees and how many and what. And they've been trying to reach me on my phone, but it was turned off. And I'm just lost in thought, and I hear this, meet me. And I literally looked at, what? Meet. It's the guy that stays on the property. He's got on his ATV. He's come looking for me. And he's sitting behind me, blowing a horn. I'm totally unaware he's even there. Just
Lost.
caught in it, enjoying it. Anyway, that's my story. You can block it out. Think about people that I can imagine. You think about somebody that's in war. like Private Ryan, that's a good story, but how do you ever get a moment if every day they're shooting at you? Well, they're shooting at heaven. I live on Linux. They're shooting at you. And after a while you block it out. When people call you and say there was a killing at Linux, and I think, well, you know, the Apple store, well, that's where I go. Oh, there was a shooting at across from Roasters. Well, that's less than 400 yards from.
Well, I got this tablet and I'm become addicted to YouTube, and I'm turning on YouTube, and there's this news service, and it pulls up feed. It says where I am, Atlanta, and it's murder, 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 murder.
So I think
Right.
you just hit on something though. You said, well, I pull up YouTube and I'm sort of addicted to. I think that's part of the problem is we have to make decisions for ourselves to choose to go out to the woods or to go do yard work. And we have to, I think about Don Harp's old sermon, there's an abundant life, but you have to choose it. It doesn't just fall in your lap.
Yeah.
And we have to form habits to not, I know some people that have they have canceled every social media, every subscription they've had, or at least turned them off for some period of time.
That's wisdom.
And when you said that, that word addicted, you say it kind of casual, like I'm addicted to YouTube, but there's probably something to that.
I think absolutely there's something to that.
I was going to say, when COVID first started, I got sucked in on the press conferences, and I was watching the national one and the New York one every day for like a month.
Wow.
And then I was like, I'm not doing this anymore.
So you watch The Bachelor then? I mean,
is it sharing too much if I told you I was on a Bachelor fantasy league?
Wait. I don't think I told that. I don't think I told
It
that.
was something I could do with my wife.
just leave your man card when you leave the room, okay? Just leave the man card when you exit the door.
How much are you smoking on that smoker next?
Or what are you smoking on this?
No, but it's incredible that's, was that beneficial?
Oh, no. Wait, the press conference?
Either.
But
No, it's trash. I mean, there's so much trash and garbage out there that, you have to make a conscious decision to turn it off.
Well, that's some people's entire life. And last week I came up with theme creation, and the reason I did, my cousin wanted me to marry her. She got married during COVID, no family there, so I went to Des Moines where she was sent there by the Methodist Church, became disenfranchised with parish ministry, so now she does a horse therapy branch. And I went up and spent some time, and after a couple of days, I'm trying to wean myself from the laptop and the cell phone, and after a couple of times just putting that aside, how wonderful it was to not have to charge something. The laptops did, I got to charge it. The phones did, I got to charge it. And instead, spending your time in nature, we took 3 of her horses out and rode them on the trail. And she's got one, a 13 and a 15 hand horse. And I'm standing between them, and they come up, they kind of brush their muzzle up against me. And I said, what are they doing? They want you to scratch your head. So I'm sitting there with these huge, beautiful animals, and later that evening, she's a singer. Her husband plays guitar, and they're out there doing their thing. And I've got cats on my shoulders, a dog in my lap, 2 dogs around my feet, just surrounded by animals, and it's a totally different rhythm.
Where is this utopia you said?
Where is this paradise?
But I guess
It's about 30 minutes north of Des Moines.
So, all right, so you went there, right? It's peaceful.
No cell service. No cell service.
How long, when you left, was that stay with you?
About a week.
A week?
Wow.
But my
Because
question
if
to
you
them
guys
is,
have ever been out in the
Vacation
Midwest,
was-
you drive forever and it's flat and it's one of two things. You get your selection, soy or corn. Corn or soy.
right, without being attacked by Jeremy, my question is, did that lead you to contemplation? Or is that a different stimulus
Good question.
that occupied your time?
I would say it gave me an opportunity to discover downtime. And I remember I wanted to get on my computer, and she says, "No, go sit in the yard with the animals."
Because during, I'm tying on what you said, during COVID, we all had downtime. We had time that, what do we do? I learned bridge. So now I'm playing bridge, but I mean, all I did was take one news conference addiction or some form of addiction and replace it with something else.
But
Did that really lead?
But did you take something bad and replace it with something better for you?
I'm not sure if there is bad or better or better or bad.
There is.
Yeah.
Definitely is.
But I think
But I mean, you're quite. I love what you said by putting heart. To me, that was incredibly insightful. About we all have an abundant life, but we have to choose. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you have to choose it or choose how we spend it. I mean, you phrase it.
Yeah. I
And
mean, you can probably find the sermon online or somewhere. I know that there was a time when they came out with some CDs of his sermons, and maybe they did that when he passed away. But the abundant life, that sermon, it's around here somewhere if anyone wants to go find it.
but to answer my question is the same thing as sin. Is there a sin that's worse than another? So is there a way to occupy my time that's worse than another?
Well,
I mean,
I don't
granted,
know.
I might not be watching porn and drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, but
Yeah.
here I'm occupying my brain with online bridge.
Well, but
Either way, I'm not contemplating.
there's no sin in all the animals that you were spending that time with, because I mean, animals, that's definitely one of those things that when you talk about walking the dogs, it's a little toward that. I mean, when you're spending time with, and it's also like spending time with nature that's probably not, probably not a lot of sin in spending time with animals for the most part.
It's not. It's not. And it was different. I'm sitting there and I didn't have any agenda. I didn't have anything I had to accomplish within a certain time frame. I'm out there with the breeze coming across my face and the dogs. It was pretty wonderful.
But you were talking about you were going to walk for 2 hours and clear your mind. I mean, our attention spans, I think, are so trained in short increments now that it's hard. And I never thought of it. My wife, several years ago in her job, had to do on air with Home Shopping Network. And so she was prepping before, and they only gave her like less than 10 minutes of material. And she goes, well, I've got to be on for 2 hours. What do I do? And I'm like, oh, the attention span is 8 minutes. Just repeat yourself every 8 minutes.
Wow.
I mean, granted, that's home shopping versus watching sports, but still, it was like they got it down to a science that people are only going to pay attention or absorb a few minutes and then they're moving on. So, I mean, it kind of shows you what our...
I bet she was so good at that.
She's still alive. I wish we got
She
any
did.
cut out of what she saw.
And yeah, and let's think now about what obstacles we have, because it's a luxury. Tommy Newberry, I was in his group, 1% Club, for 2 years. We get together every so often. It was $1,000 for a group, half-a-day session. And, for that kind of price tag, you expect something wonderful. And what Newberry was telling us is break away. It's a luxury. You guys are all winners in the game of life. You're type A, you're successful in your business. But what kind of power do you have to bring to bear to do nothing? Have an unaccounted for couple of hours that you can free your mind to just exist, to be. And yeah, being with animals was so cool. Go out and ride the horses, and you put the horses back in the corral, and the dogs are, she had a border collie and an Australian shepherd. And so they're barking and hurting the horses, and the horses would get pissed off and, kick back at them. But it was just cool to be out there, totally different rhythm. Pardon?
Yeah, Michael, I'm going to challenge you. It's not a luxury, it's a choice.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You don't have to be top 1%, a winner at the game of life to find 20 minutes of quiet time a day. It's a choice to fill that time with YouTube or whatever the hell you fill it with. It's not luxury, so anybody can do it.
As you sit there overlooking St. John's. Yeah, my experience is that
Not a luxury.
The location's a luxury, but I mean, Stephen,
to be there.
yeah, the location's a luxury, but the time, everyone has the same amount of time. Everyone has time. And everyone has a choice on what they spend that time on.
Well, it's funny. I'm sorry, your name? What's your name? Michael Jeremy. Love your reference to heart, because I think one of his best was show me a man's calendar, his checkbook, and I'll show you what he values, right?
Yeah.
And we did that in Disciple, and I'm looking at my checkbook, my day planner, back when you had a physical day planner.
Yeah.
And I told my class, I stand for Chardonnay at Houston's.
But to carry on the time thought, there are hundreds, do this exercise, because someone forced me to do it years ago. Someone that used to be part of this group. There are 168 hours in the week. Okay? Break it down. We sleep, some of us, 6, 7, 8 hours a night. Add that up. We work, whatever number that is, right?
Right.
So if you get to, let's say you get to 80, right? Well, you do the math, right? There's still a lot of time. You start breaking down the time, like how much time you spend in prayer, how much time you spend service, how much time you spend in just downtime. I mean, it's crazy, but there's a lot of time that's just arbitrary, right? And look, I mean, our lives are it's between one dash, right? There are 2 days between one dash. And the time, what we do with that time, you talk about intentionality. I mean, if we don't bring God in, right? And I'm not saying I'm got some perfect plan to this, but if you don't have the intentionality around it, the tyranny of time and everything else just buries everything, right?
Yeah. Well, Bella talked about being in a big banquet hall, and there's a window, an opening in the wall, and a bird flies through from one oblivion and there for a brief time, and then into another oblivion. And he says, in some ways, life is like that. So how do you? I call it a luxury because I find it hard to carve out time for nothing.
But it's not nothing. I guess that's my whole thing. Right.
I want to build on that because I do transformation in companies where I transform what people spend their time on.
All right.
And one of the very first exercises I do if I have an employee that's not doing the right task and right activity, or tells me they don't have the time to do something, it's like, what else are you doing? I mean, I have isolated people where they're in a conference room and I write down the time that they start whatever tasks they're doing. And when they complete that task, they just write down what task you're doing toward the day, and it's reflective on what Jeremy's saying, because at the end of the day, look back and say between 8 and 9 or 9 and 10 or 12 and 14 and figure out what did I spend my day on, and then evaluate that hindsight instead of evaluating it looking forward. As an impression, you're thinking, break down your week going forward, but break down a single day that you just lived.
Well, just know where your time is going.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the exact same perspective.
Like, bring someone else to the next step. I mean, accountability is everything. Right?
No way.
So, well, right. if you shine a light on what you're doing or not doing, and I get not doing something is, like being at one, right? But I would argue that we're made a certain way where not doing something isn't doing something, right? I mean, we're present, right? So we're occupied with something, either thought or like what we're doing or what we're not doing. But if you don't know where your time goes, it's really hard to evaluate where you even are on the spectrum.
Yeah, coming out of Newberry's class, I had, and I still have it on my computer, I had my entire week broken down into 15-minute increments.
Wow.
Yeah, it's nuts. And that to go and well, being a lawyer is your time your life being broken down in 6 minute increments, 1/10 of an hour. But when I say doing nothing, maybe a different way of conceptualizing it was that I would say for these 2 hours, I don't have a goal that I'm going to set right now. I walked, I existed, and it was incredible. And when I say you have to be intentional, it's a luxury. I find it hard to replicate that.
So I came to Atlanta in 1984.
Yeah.
And started with a Bible study, men's Bible study at Trinity Presbyterian Church. So that's where I went. And I've been doing these morning Bible studies ever since. So, at the years, it's a lot of years. And with that, basically, there was this similar type of discussion, and basically I began the discipline of the mornings that I'm not doing Bible study. I get up and have, devotional time, which, basically ultimately started at like 5 o'clock. When I had kids, I had to really get an early start to the day. And I've done that for, 40 years. And I have the opportunity, places to go where I've carved this out of my day and my week, for 40 years. And it's good. It's similar. I mean, I'm similar to you. The yard work, I love mowing the yard, especially when I had 3 kids, because that was an hour that I mean, it was just like, I was trying to figure out how to mow it 3 times a week. My issue, though, is different. Is that I think it's in the Bible. Isn't there basically a phrase in there? Basically, they do the analogy of you're like the person who sees his reflection and then forgets what he looks like.
It's in James chapter 1.
Is that what it is? Is it in James?
James.
I'm pretty certain there is. That's in the Bible. There was someone who's writing talks about that as an analogy. You are like the person, or you forget what you look like. And so I do these things, and my issue though is not carving that out. My issue is basically I carve it out, and then I'm done. All right, my whatever time, 20 minutes, say I allocate to a devotional period in the morning. Put that thing in the shelf, and then I forget who I am.
You remind me, I don't know if you guys know Sean Berry. He's got 3 daughters. He says, you know what sound I hear when I go to the bathroom and I'm finally alone by myself? Daddy! What are you doing, Daddy? And I think of him, the guy's got so many responsibilities, and a lot of us have so many responsibilities that it's hard to tear away and say, I'm not going to be productive. But you're right, you're productive in a different way. You're seeing
the challenge, I think, is you can do this. I mean, all of us are disciplined enough that we could, if we wanted to make this a priority, we could do that. And but really, how do you then take that benefit and basically change your day because of it, through it, the rest of your day?
So there's 2 tasks then. One is to do the devotion, and then one is to
remember it. Basically, yeah.
But
you're right.
But as you talked about how then you just go and you do something else. I hear that, and then something you said about filling your calendar. I work with a guy who, when we can see each other's calendars within the company I work for, and his calendar was. I mean, he wanted it to be full. It was full, and he loved to look at it and say, God, look how busy I am. He had something every hour, and it might have been a conference call with a client. It might have been taking a child to the dentist. It might have been an interview for, soccer for another child. But when I saw him and how he was just so overwhelmed, I just said, I need to be the opposite of that. And my calendar has almost nothing on it. I mean, I might have 1 call a day or 1 call and another meeting. If I have more than 3 things on my calendar, I think, oh God, something's terribly wrong.
Yeah.
But he looks at that, and that's the reflection he sees is, God, look how busy I am. And I'm like, I want the opposite of that. Mm-hmm. And I actually, I learned a lot of how not to be just by observing this. It's probably why I resigned last week.
In follow-up, James 1:23 through say 25. For if anyone is hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks intently at his natural face in a mirror. For he looks at himself and goes away and at once forget what he was like. But the one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing.
Yeah, I'm the first guy.
There you go, Chester. You get the
Right on
Bible
it.
Award.
Encyclopedia.
So I think it's not enough to just, I do the devotional time first thing. That's when I wake up before my kids. None I can do it, and I feel like it sets a good framework for the day. But I also relate to exactly what you're saying about it's done and check it off the list and go about my business. But I think part of that, what I'm not doing is, what does the Bible say, to pray without ceasing? I don't think it's enough to just do the devotional first thing in the morning. I think we need to turn to God throughout the day, continuously, for it really to make an impact.
Tommy Newberry called that margin. He would say, figure out what time do you need to get up to get everything done, and then roll that back 2 hours and wake up 2 hours ahead. That's your margin. So if you've forgotten something, and I did 4:40 because Duncan Gibbs, my good friend, would get up at 5, and I had to beat Duncan. So I get up at 4:40, and I would read the Bible, and I would take in the day. And it was a discipline, and it was a chore to get up that early, but I found that it took stress out, and that's, I guess, something of what I'm trying to promote. When I go and walk at Silver Comet, when I'm sitting there with the animals, the stress just flowed off of me.
Do you do that now?
No, I'm trying to get back to it. And one of the things that we'll close with this thing with our last 5 minutes. What are obstacles to you doing that? And I intentionally say, well, Saturdays at 10 o'clock, I'm going to find myself on the Silver Comet Trail. And I'm going to go through my discipline and rid my mind of concerns and worries. Sometimes I'll lay in bed and I don't want to get out of bed because I'm going, crap, what am I going to face when I get up here?
Was that last Friday?
Yeah. At 8:30, me, I'm suffering from insomnia, and I'm 8:30, I'm going, how did I oversleep? And then Saturday, I wake up and my computer screen is blank. And it was a lot. But some of the things that help me get away from that is to have that every week. I make that promise to myself. I'm going to be a Silver Comet, and I'm going to meditatively empty my mind, get on the trail. All I have to do is walk. And it's been incredible, rejuvenating.
I really like I admire how the Jews honor the Sabbath and really make a conscious effort to not do anything one day a week.
And the Romans thought they were insane. What do you have to stay? You don't do anything. You're lazy.
I mean, that's how we were designed, right? And I'm guilty of not honoring it, but a couple of years ago, I made a conscious effort that I will not do work on Sunday, business work. I do a lot of work around the house and stuff, but it's been helpful, But I admire how the Jewish nation, they really don't do anything, including pushing an elevator button, which I think is a little silly, but.
But I think that's a segment of that religion too. And I think we as Christians used to be. I mean, I know my grandmother, we couldn't mow the lawn if my grandmother was coming over. We certainly wouldn't tell her to move. So I think Christians were in the same vein that you give honor to the Jewish, I think.
They were, and I mean, businesses used to be closed on Sunday. Now it's only Chick-fil-A. Everything else is on.
Yeah. Well, Abraham Heschel has a book called Sabbath, and it talks about how the Jews celebrated time. They could go and meet with God by celebrating time, by taking that day. And my best history educations were at Dickens Seminary. And they talked about how the Romans thought the Jews were absolutely out of their head because they did something that seemed inexplicable.
Nice.
And the Romans were wildly successful until they weren't.
Until those nasty Visigoths.
Of course, the thing was about the Romans, what crushed them was basically they moved away from work and went to
Everything was on the public
and such
domain.
wealth. They didn't do it
Sounds
with
vaguely
leisure.
familiar.
Caligula on steroids.
Yeah.
Decadence.
All right, we're at the end of our time. Any prayer requests? Any closing thoughts?
I have one phrase. I have a 42-year-old nephew in West Virginia who is state patrol and built like a brick. He had emergency appendectomy a week ago yesterday, and they found a mass up against the colon, which 99% of the time is cancer. And the pathology report came back yesterday, and it was cancer-free. Wow. And so I can tell you that his having spent 1 week looking down the barrel of the gun has changed his perspective on life totally.
Absolutely.
That's great.
That's a praise.
Probably did some good contemplation.
Yeah, I have an update